A very hi to all the viewers. This is an article from The Hindu dated July 28, 2022. The poor state of India's fiscal federalism, concerns of the founding fathers addressing social economic inequities are being forgotten in today's fiscal policy. Now friends, in order to understand the sense of this article, we first need to clear our concept. Only then we would be able to relate and understand the current development. And now the UPSC is going in such a direction that are we able to relate our core concept which we study in our core subjects to that of the current scenario in the news. So let's get started. This article is important for our GS2, issues and challenges pertaining to India's federal structure. Now what all are we going to learn? Constitutional design of India's federalism, India's structure of fiscal federalism, what is the role of Finance Commission in ensuring fiscal federation, what is cess, what is the way forward. Now friends, first of all, quick recap regarding the historic perspective. In his speech in 1949 to the Constituent Assembly, B.R. Ambedkar sounded a note of caution about Indian Republic entering a life of contradiction. In politics, we will have equality, and in social life, we will have inequality. These conflicts demanded attention. Fail to do so, and those denied will blow up the structure of political democracy. So the Ambedkar's concern was that politically we all are equal. Equal in sense of one person, one vote system. But in reality, of social and economic life of India had so much diversities and disparities of rich, poor, federal, socially boycotted. India was a multifaceted, diverse country with rich diversity of culture, language and demographic. So the concern was to allocate the division of power in such a way that it would sustain all-weather federalism. For that, in the beginning we had two systems to be adopted. One was unitary government and another was American Federation. But we adopted neither of the two, but we had our own model of Indian federalism. So next we would see why we did not adopt a unitary government, which is a British form of government, and American Federation. But we have developed our own model of Indian federalism. In the beginning, soon after we attained independence, we had British influence on our country. Like we adopted rule of law in our constitution and other. But we did not feel like going through unitary form of government, which is a British model of governance. Why? Because of so many reasons. Like we suffered colonial oppressions more than a century. We had diverse demographic boundaries. But the primary reason was Act 1935. This was the second milestone towards completely responsible government. We actually fought for this. And what was it? It was to attain provincial autonomy. That's how we outrightly rejected this unitary form of government. So our next move was to go for American Federation. So we tried. And what is American model of federation states? In this article, as the writer has pointed out, the writer says holding together federalism in contrast to the coming together federalism in which smaller independent entities come together to form federation. This is United States of America form of federation. And I will explain in a much more simple language. Content has been taken from a book, Pratap Bhanu Mehta's book. It's a very good book. It says, coming together who were once independent and sovereign states. Like there were a few independent sovereign states in America. They had a consent. Consent, that means that they have agreement to transform themselves into subnational units. Small national units. That's how in American model of federation we have two nationalities. One that is of a nation and the second that is of a state, and devolve upward some of their powers to the national federal government. So what they did, that these independent sovereign states, which are 51 in number, have came together, they got united, and that's how we say United States. United States. All those independent entities got united, United States of America. They gave themselves a national federal government. This is what American model of federation is. So in a journey of achieving federation, we moved ahead. And we found that India, this was not the case. Instead of having independent sovereign entities as a state, we had 549 princely states during 1950, which were classified as Part A, Part B, Part C, and Part D as governors, provinces, princely states, chief commissioners, and centrally administrated states. So, whom to make agreement with? So, first we formed a nation called Bharat by integrating princely states. That's how articles say and describes India, that is Bharat. Then we carved out states from this union India. So these states are indestructible. That's how we say federation is a union in Indian concept, because it is indestructible. So that's how this is an arrangement rather than an agreement as that we have in America. So first we integrated the princely state, followed by we consolidated the states, as we have read 4 chapters in detail regarding consolidation of states in Bipin Chandra. So this is all about Indian model of federation, which different writers have given different names. For example, Very has given quasi-federal, cooperative federalism, and recently by our courts it has been defined as pragmatic federalism and federation with central tilt. This was given by Gravlin Austin. So this was all about Indian model of federation. So Article 1 describes India is a Bharat, union of states, and Article 2 grant powers to the Parliament, the power to admit into Union of India new states and the power to establish new states. So this was all about consolidation of states. Now, as we achieved federation by giving ourselves division of power between state and the central. But this federation has a characteristic towards central tilt or unitary tilt. Now let's understand why it was required to give this federation a unitary tilt. As I have already mentioned that this was a democratic imperative of a multicultural India. See, it was essential to give autonomy to all states to derive their economy the way they want to, because different states have different demographic and geographical boundaries. For example, Uttarakhand wants to focus on tourism, Maharashtra wants to focus on employment, UP and Bihar wants to focus on HDI. So, state must have autonomy to pursue their own economic development model or their own economic agendas. At the same time, if every states become independent so that they started drifting in their own direction, then the fleet, who is Union of India, would dissolve. So in that situation, we must have one central captain who ensures that while retaining autonomy, the states remain united. And they not only remain united, but the coordination between states should be maintained. So that's why this big boss has an important role to play. Now let's understand what the writer has to say in this para. In order to pursue or attain their economic development model goals, the state needs funds. Unless these funds are available to the states, they are no autonomous. So, federalism can never be practiced without fiscal autonomy. Now, there are certain small states with less revenue. They require additional funds from the center for their regional development. So, for the regional equitable and regional development, these small states needs additional fund from the center. Now, next is major developmental areas comes under state list. So states have few major responsibility to perform, like health, education, policing also we can say, laws and orders. So state have major development responsibilities, but as present major revenue are collected by center. Major portion has to be shared with the state. The major portion from which the revenue comes from, like income tax, which is collected by the center, like corporate tax. Now this tax collected by the center goes to the consolidated fund of India. From here it is shared between center and states. Now the authority which determines the sharing of the revenue is the Finance Commission. As we all know and we have discussed in polity, that Finance Commission is a constitutional body, Article 280. Now this Finance Commission decide the vertical distribution and horizontal distribution of revenue based on certain formulas. The 13th Finance Commission report says that total revenue, out of total revenue, 32% must be shared with the states. Then 14th Finance Commission, which is currently operating, says that it must be shared 42% of the revenue. So how much have to be shared with the state is called as vertical. For example, 42% have to be shared, so it is called vertical distribution. And out of these 42%, how much has to be shared with different states based on their criteria or demographic dividend, it is decided. So this is called horizontal distribution of revenue. So the final authority which decides the state has enough share and who determines is the Finance Commission of India. So the body which ensures the state has enough funds is Finance Commission. Now next is, the writer says, hollowing out fiscal capacity. The ability of the states to finance current expenditures from their own revenues has declined from 69% in 1955-56 to less than 38% in 2019-2020. While the expenditure of the state has been shooting up, their revenues did not. They still spend 60% of their expenditure in the country, 85% in education and 82% in health. Since states cannot raise tax revenue because of curtailed indirect tax rights subsumed in GST. Next is, even the increased share of devolution mooted by the 14th Finance Commission, which I have already mentioned that from 32 to 42, was subverted by raising non-divisive cess and surcharges that go directly into the union kitty. Next is, the GST compensation to states have had huge consequences. Now, what is GST compensation cess and what is cess that directly goes to union, that we have to see. Cess is a tax imposed for specific development purpose and can be used only for that purpose. So it is a tied tax, not for any other purpose. Now there are 35 cess that the center normally collects. The collection from the cess are supposed to be transferred to the funds in public account for defraying expenditure on that specific purpose. They are not part of Consolidated Fund of India and cannot be used for regular purpose. So therefore, the meaning is that the Finance Commission has no application in cess. That means that these cess are not supposed to be shared with the states, but they are supposed to be used for particular purposes. For example, the cess could be used for health development or for education, higher education purpose. There are so many kinds of cess that has been imposed by the center as a tax. For example, there are Swachh Bharat Abhiyan cess. So the nature of these cess that they are a part of public account committee. So the operation of these cess involves transfer of funds into that particular designated fund for which they are meant, and it is properly monitored and assessed. So, as I have said that there are 35 cesses. So, what are the is it wise to impose such kind of cesses, and what are its consequences? They can be imposed, but the burden are on the taxpayer. Plus, we need a huge administration to govern these cess. Now, what is GST cess? GST was introduced. The state government were expected to fall short of some revenues during the initial period of 1 to 3 years when the GST was introduced. In order to compensate the loss that were incurred by the states, these cess were introduced. So, recently there has been debate that compensation which was supposed to be given to the states have been delayed for a long time. However, the center gave an excuse that it is because of the pandemic. So, the center which accumulate revenues from the cess for GST compensation did not, on the other hand, provided or transferred to the states, but the cess that they impose on other development activities legally has not been transferred to them. Finance Commission has made a point that with the imposition of so many taxes, the purpose of Finance Commission has been defeated, thereby defeating the fiscal federalism of the country. Therefore, in CAG's audit report, it was mentioned that the center has not transferred approx 6,000 crore rupees of cess in 2017 to 18 and 40,000 crore of cess in 2018-19, and they have not transferred to the states but have retained to Consolidated Fund of India. Now the writer further says, by turning states into merely implementing agencies of the union scheme, their autonomy has been curbed. There are 130 centrally sponsored schemes, and these schemes, driven by one size fit all approaches, are given precedence over state scheme, undermining the electorally mandate democratic politics of the states. And that's how this was the concern of our forefathers, that addressing socio-economic inequities were forgetting in the process of ushering in an era of political centralization and cultural nationalism that drive today's fiscal policy. Secondly, the diversion of the state's own fund to centrally sponsored schemes, thereby depleting resources for its own scheme, violates constitutional provisions. Why should there be a centrally sponsored scheme on an item that is in the state list? Similarly, why should the state share the expenditure of a scheme on the union list? For instance, health is on the state list, so why should the union thrust this scheme onto the states? So, this has actually deepened the inequality, because the necessity of every state or different states are different. How we can attain fiscal federalism in its true sense? The writer has mentioned and referred so many reforms that could take place. First is, India has a poor record of taxing its rich. Its tax-rich ratio has been one of the lowest in the world. India has simply failed to tax its property classes. Its income tax base has been very narrow. Indirect tax still accounts for about 56% of total taxes. The union government slashed corporate tax from 35 to 25 in 2019. India's fiscal federalism, driven by political centralization, has deepened socio-economic inequality. It has not only altered interstate disparities either. If there was anything that alleviated poverty, reduced inequality, and improved the well-being of people, these were the time-tested schemes of the state government, but they are now under threat. So, with the widening gap of these inequality, Dr. Amrit Sen has to say that Amrit Sen on inequality, as inequality increases, the standard of living is worse for those at the bottom of the economic ladder than it would have been without the relative inequality. So, India's federal institutions were meant to create a balance between low performing states and high performing states. Second, the pandemic has deepened wealth concentration and inequality, so the corporate tax is at its low time. At present, the physical structure of India stands on the two pillars: one, Finance Commission, and the second, GST. The first is responsible for recommendations related to devolution of taxes between center and state and grant in aid from the Consolidated Fund of India, and later is responsible to maintain uniformity in taxation. So, the five important issues concerning the states of physical federalism in India. The India need to ensure broad consistency between consecutive finance commissions. Ensuring the formation of state finance, this is very important, commission every 5 years, and they are promoting their robust functioning, fostering a spirit of cooperative federalism among states, also promoting cooperative federalism among states and prioritization of robust expenditure planning to address socio and economic concern affecting the center and the state without compromising the fiscal target. And the Niti Aayog, which has been replaced by Planning Commission, should strive to remove regional and sub-regional disparities among states by reducing development imbalances. So, this was all about this article. I hope you could be able to understand at depth, and this video have proved to be informative to you. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe my channel.